Kepler Station Academy prided itself on being humanity's first successful experiment in interspecies education, which was a diplomatic way of saying that most days nobody ended up in the medical bay due to cultural misunderstandings. Alex Rivera considered this a minor miracle, given that his job as a maintenance technician required him to navigate corridors filled with teenage aliens whose idea of appropriate behavior ranged from surprisingly normal to call security immediately. The environmental systems chose Tuesday morning to demonstrate their own interpretation of cultural diversity by producing atmospheric conditions that would have made a penguin reach for thermal underwear. Alex adjusted the heating distribution for the third time in 2 hours, muttering creative suggestions about where the design engineers could relocate their specifications. The thermal regulators are functioning within normal parameters, his diagnostic tablet announced with the cheerful tone of a device that had never experienced frostbite. Normal parameters for what? A meat locker on Europa? The tablet considered this. Current temperature is 18 degrees Celsius. Recommended comfort range for multi-species accommodation is 16 to 22 degrees Celsius. Tell that to the Altarian exchange student who's probably turning into a popsicle right about now. Alex had noticed Princess Zara during his rounds. Hard to miss someone whose elegant pointed ears marked her as Altarian royalty, especially when those ears were currently pressed flat against her skull in what he'd learned was their species' equivalent of uncontrollable shivering. Her desert homeworld apparently maintained temperatures that would make most humans spontaneously combust, which explained why she looked like she was slowly freezing to death in what the Academy considered normal atmospheric conditions. She sat alone in the main corridor, wrapped in what appeared to be every piece of clothing she owned, still trembling despite her efforts to maintain royal dignity. Other students walked past with the careful indifference that teenagers displayed when confronted with someone else's misfortune, not actively cruel, just thoroughly committed to avoiding involvement in anything that might prove socially complicated. Alex paused in his diagnostic routine, watching Princess Zara attempt to study from a tablet while her hands shook too badly to operate the controls effectively. Her royal status created an invisible barrier around her that other students were reluctant to cross, leaving her isolated in her struggle with the station's atmospheric systems. This is probably a terrible idea, Alex told his diagnostic tablet. Please specify the nature of your proposed action. I'm about to commit either an act of kindness or an interplanetary incident. Possibly both. He shrugged out of his maintenance jacket, a battered piece of equipment that had survived everything from plasma coolant leaks to an unfortunate encounter with a malfunctioning food processor, and approached the shivering princess with what he hoped was an appropriately casual demeanor. Your Highness, he said, draping the jacket over her shoulders before his common sense could intervene, I'm pretty sure there are regulations against royal hypothermia on Academy grounds. Something about diplomatic incidents and paperwork nobody wants to fill out. Princess Zara looked up at him with eyes that held enough surprise to power a small generator. Her ears, which had been pressed flat against her skull, suddenly perked forward in a gesture Alex didn't recognize but somehow interpreted as positive. Thank you, she said, her accented English carrying musical undertones that made his universal translator hum contentedly. This is most kind. Don't mention it. Literally. If anyone asks, this never happened. I have a reputation as a heartless maintenance drone to maintain. She pulled the jacket closer around herself, and Alex noticed how the oversized garment seemed to swallow her small frame. The oil stains and scorch marks from various repair disasters looked oddly dignified when worn by alien royalty, as if she'd somehow transformed his work clothes into a fashion statement through sheer force of personality. Your jacket carries interesting scents, Princess Zara observed, and Alex felt heat rise in his cheeks. Sorry about that. Maintenance work isn't exactly known for its aromatherapy benefits. There's probably some plasma coolant residue, maybe a hint of burned electronics, definitely some of whatever that green stuff was that leaked from the food synthesizers last week. It smells like purpose, she said thoughtfully. Like someone who builds and repairs and makes things function. It is a good scent. Alex blinked, uncertain how to respond to having his occupational odor described as pleasant by alien royalty. Right. Well. The environmental system should be back to normal in a few hours, so you won't need to. I mean, you can give it back whenever. But Princess Zara had already returned her attention to her studies, the jacket wrapped around her like armor against the station's atmospheric assault. Her ears had returned to their normal position, no longer pressed flat with cold, and she seemed to radiate contentment despite the continued temperature problems. Alex returned to his diagnostic work with the uncomfortable realization that he'd just performed his first act of interspecies diplomacy using clothing that had probably violated several health codes during its years of service. The environmental systems responded to his adjustments with mechanical compliance, gradually raising the ambient temperature back to levels that wouldn't require survival gear. By midday, the corridors had returned to their normal atmospheric conditions, and Alex expected to find his jacket returned to his quarters or waiting at the maintenance office. Instead, he discovered Princess Zara in the Academy mess hall, still wearing his jacket over her elegant royal attire while eating lunch with the studied isolation of someone accustomed to dining alone. The sight was surreal enough to make him question his understanding of alien psychology. The jacket, which had looked perfectly normal on his shoulders, transformed her appearance completely. Instead of untouchable royalty, she looked like a student. Just another academy attendee trying to navigate the complexities of interspecies education while staying warm in inadequate clothing. Maybe she forgot she was wearing it, Alex muttered, approaching her table with what he hoped was casual confidence. Princess Zara? The temperature's back to normal now, so I can take my jacket back if you're done with it. She looked up from her meal, something that appeared to be salad but moved slightly when she wasn't looking at it, and tilted her head in a gesture that reminded him uncomfortably of curious cats. Your jacket? The one you're wearing. My maintenance jacket. The one I lent you this morning when you were freezing to death. Ah yes. This jacket. She touched the worn fabric with careful fingers. It is very comfortable. Very practical. Right. So I'll just... Alex reached for the jacket, and Princess Zara shifted slightly, not exactly avoiding his hand but somehow managing to make retrieving the garment impossible without actually grabbing her. I find that I have grown quite attached to this garment, she said with diplomatic precision. Perhaps we could discuss alternative arrangements. Alternative arrangements? It's a jacket. My jacket. I need it for work. Of course. I understand completely. Princess Zara smiled with the kind of diplomatic warmth that probably ended wars and started others. I shall consider your request most seriously. She returned to her animated salad, effectively dismissing him with the kind of polite finality that made arguing seem not just futile but potentially treasonous. Alex stood beside her table, watching alien royalty eat lunch while wearing his oil-stained work clothes, and wondered if this was how interplanetary incidents typically began. This is fine, he told himself. Completely normal. Happens all the time. Alien princesses steal maintenance equipment. Probably covered in the employee handbook somewhere. He spent the rest of his shift trying to remember if the Academy's diplomatic protocols included provisions for clothing theft by foreign royalty, and whether filing a formal complaint would constitute an act of war against the Altarian Confederation. By evening, Princess Zara had worn his jacket to 3 different classes, 2 social gatherings, and what appeared to be a formal diplomatic meeting with the Academy administration. Students and faculty watched her pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to bewilderment, trying to decipher the fashion statement being made by someone who typically dressed like she'd stepped out of an alien fashion magazine. Alex cornered Danny, his roommate and the closest thing to a cultural expert available at short notice. Is there some alien protocol I should know about? Some Altarian custom that makes jacket borrowing a sacred act? Danny, who was majoring in xenocultural studies and thus qualified to speculate wildly about alien behavior, looked up from his textbooks with interest. What kind of jacket? Work jacket. Maintenance issue. Covered in various industrial fluids and probably some food stains. And she's still wearing it? Like it's part of her royal regalia. Danny's expression shifted from casual interest to academic fascination. Alex, I think you may have accidentally committed a cultural exchange of potentially significant proportions. What does that mean in terms a maintenance technician can understand? It means you're either about to become famous for advancing interspecies relations, or you've inadvertently declared war on her entire civilization. Alex stared at his roommate with growing horror. Those seem like very different outcomes. Welcome to the wonderful world of xenocultural diplomacy, where every gesture is loaded with meanings you never intended and consequences you can't predict. Through their dormitory window, Alex could see Princess Zara walking across the academy courtyard, his jacket still wrapped around her shoulders like a talisman against the universe's atmospheric inconsistencies. Even from a distance, she looked different, more relaxed, more approachable, more like someone he might actually have a conversation with rather than someone whose presence required formal protocols and carefully measured words. Maybe it's not that complicated, Alex said finally. Maybe she just likes the jacket. In my experience, Danny replied, nothing involving alien royalty is ever that simple. Alex couldn't argue with that logic, but as he watched Princess Zara disappear into the Academy's residential wing, still wearing his jacket like it belonged to her, he found himself hoping that maybe, just this once, things could be exactly as simple as they appeared. Within 24 hours of the Great Jacket incident, Princess Zara had transformed Alex's oil-stained maintenance wear into the Academy's most discussed fashion phenomenon since Professor Williams had shown up to lectures wearing what turned out to be ceremonial Andromedan battle armor. She's wearing it again, Danny reported, returning from his morning xenobiology class with the expression of someone who'd witnessed something that defied scientific explanation. To a formal diplomatic etiquette seminar. Your jacket. Over what appeared to be traditional Altarian court robes worth more than my entire education. Alex looked up from his diagnostic tablet, where he'd been pretending to analyze atmospheric recycling systems while actually researching Altarian cultural customs. Maybe she forgot she was wearing it. For 3 days straight. Including during her video call with the Altarian embassy. People forget things. I once wore my pajama shirt to work for an entire shift. That's because you have the observational skills of a particularly unobservant rock. She's alien royalty. I'm pretty sure they have people whose job is to remember what they're wearing. The Academy's gossip network, which operated with the efficiency of a military intelligence operation staffed entirely by caffeinated teenagers, had already developed 18 different theories about Princess Zara's attachment to maintenance clothing. The leading hypothesis involved either alien mind control, a bizarre mating ritual, or performance art commentary on economic inequality in interspecies relations. Alex's attempts to approach Princess Zara directly had been thwarted by what he was beginning to recognize as advanced diplomatic evasion techniques. She was never quite available when he tried to catch her between classes, always surrounded by study groups when he approached her in the library, and somehow managed to finish eating and leave the mess hall exactly 30 seconds before he arrived at her table. I think she's avoiding me, Alex told Dr. Elena Santos during his scheduled consultation. Dr. Santos served as the Academy's xenocultural specialist, which meant she was paid to understand why alien students did incomprehensible things and then explain it to confused humans using small words and lots of patience. What makes you think she's avoiding you? Yesterday I saw her duck into a maintenance closet when she spotted me coming down the corridor. A maintenance closet. She's royalty, and she hid in a closet full of cleaning supplies to avoid talking to me. Dr. Santos made a note on her tablet. Alex, what do you know about Altarian gift-giving customs? Nothing. Should I? Among Altarians, personal items, especially clothing that carries the owner's scent and energy signature, are considered deeply intimate gifts. Accepting such an item creates what they call a thread of connection between individuals. Alex felt something cold settle in his stomach. What kind of connection? It depends on the cultural context and the relationship between the individuals involved. Between family members, it represents affection and trust. Between potential romantic partners, it can be interpreted as a declaration of serious intent. And between a maintenance technician and alien royalty? That's where things become complicated. Altarian society is highly stratified. The idea of a royal accepting intimate gifts from someone of significantly lower social status is unprecedented. Alex stared at Dr. Santos with growing horror. Are you telling me I accidentally proposed to an alien princess? No, you accidentally created a social situation that doesn't exist in Altarian cultural frameworks. Princess Zara is essentially improvising her response to a scenario her people have never encountered. By keeping my jacket and avoiding me. By keeping your jacket and trying to figure out what it means without causing a diplomatic incident that could affect interspecies relations for the next century. That evening, Alex decided to take the direct approach, which in his experience was either the best possible solution or the fastest route to spectacular failure. He stationed himself outside Princess Zara's favorite study alcove in the library and waited with the patience of someone whose alternative plan involved filing a formal theft report with Academy security. She appeared at precisely 1900 hours, moving with the fluid grace that made it seem like she was dancing through conversations with gravity. When she spotted Alex, her ears twitched in what he'd learned to recognize as mild alarm, but she approached with diplomatic composure. Alex Rivera, she said, his name carrying musical inflections that made it sound more interesting than it had any right to be. You appear to be lurking. I prefer strategically positioned. We need to talk about the jacket situation. Ah yes. The jacket situation. She settled into the adjacent chair with careful precision, arranging his jacket around herself like armor. It has become quite the topic of conversation. People are starting to think we're. Alex gestured vaguely between them, hoping she would understand what he couldn't quite articulate. Romantically involved? That's one theory. The other theories include mind control, blackmail, and some kind of weird alien fashion statement about economic inequality. Princess Zara laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with wind chimes. Your species has remarkable imagination when it comes to explaining simple behavior. So what is the explanation? She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers tracing the worn fabric of his jacket with careful attention. Among my people, we have a concept called Telnavari. It translates roughly as comfort-bringing thing. Something that carries good feelings, safety, acceptance. Like a security blanket? More complex. Telnavari items are usually inherited, passed down through families. They carry the emotional essence of those who owned them before. She looked up at him with eyes that held depths he was only beginning to recognize. Your jacket has become my Telnavari, Alex Rivera. It carries your kindness, your willingness to help someone who was cold and alone. When I wear it, I feel accepted. Normal. Like I belong here instead of being an alien curiosity that everyone watches but no one approaches. Alex felt something shift in his understanding of the situation. You've been lonely. I am always lonely. It is the nature of being alien royalty at a human educational institution. Everyone is either too intimidated to speak to me or too interested in my political connections to see me as a person. She pulled his jacket closer around herself. But when I wear this, people see a student in worn clothing instead of a princess in expensive robes. They speak to me differently. They treat me like a friend. And that's worth all the diplomatic complications. Alex Rivera, do you know what it feels like to be seen as yourself rather than as your title? He thought about it seriously. Not really. I've never been anything except a maintenance technician. But I can imagine it might be pretty amazing. It is. Your jacket gives me that gift every day. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, surrounded by the quiet hum of students studying and the distant sounds of the Academy's evening routines. Alex found himself studying Princess Zara's profile, noting how she looked both regal and approachable when she wasn't maintaining formal diplomatic posture. There's going to be trouble, he said finally. Dr. Santos says accepting personal clothing items is a big deal in Altarian culture. Eventually, someone's going to notice and cause problems. I know. Her ears drooped slightly. My guardian, Captain Theros, arrives next week for a routine inspection. He will not understand. What will happen? He will insist that I return your jacket and maintain proper royal dignity. He will probably also insist that we have no further contact, to prevent any appearance of impropriety. Alex felt an unexpected surge of protectiveness. And if you refuse? I am a princess, Alex Rivera. Refusal is not always an option available to me. That sucks. Yes, Princess Zara agreed solemnly. It does indeed suck. Over the following days, Alex found himself paying closer attention to Princess Zara's daily routine, noticing details he'd overlooked before. How she carefully rolled up the jacket's sleeves so her hands could function properly. How her posture relaxed when she wore it, becoming less formally perfect and more humanly comfortable. How other students had indeed started treating her differently, approaching her for study groups, including her in casual conversations, inviting her to social gatherings that would have been unthinkable when she dressed exclusively in royal attire. His jacket had become more than clothing, it had become her passport to normal student life. The realization made Alex understand that what he'd interpreted as theft was actually something far more precious. A desperate attempt to hold on to the first taste of genuine acceptance she'd experienced since arriving at the academy. The diplomatic complications suddenly seemed less important than the simple fact that someone he cared about was finally able to feel like she belonged somewhere. Danny, he said one evening while his roommate buried himself in xenocultural textbooks, what do you know about formal gift-giving protocols? Why? Are you planning to make the situation more complicated? I'm planning to make it more official. If Princess Zara needs my jacket to feel normal here, then she should have it. Properly. With all the correct cultural formalities so nobody can complain about diplomatic impropriety. Danny looked up with the expression of someone watching a friend volunteer for experimental surgery. Alex, do you have any idea what you're suggesting? I'm suggesting that sometimes doing the right thing is more important than following the rules. That sounds like something someone says right before they accidentally start an interplanetary war. Alex considered this possibility. Worth the risk. Outside their dormitory window, Princess Zara walked across the courtyard in his jacket, surrounded by a group of human and alien students who were animatedly discussing something that made her laugh with genuine delight. She looked happy in a way that had nothing to do with royal protocols and everything to do with simply being accepted as herself. Definitely worth the risk, Alex repeated, and began planning his first attempt at formal interspecies diplomacy. Captain Theros arrived at Kepler Station Academy with all the subtle grace of a military inspection combined with a natural disaster. Alex first became aware of his presence when every Altarian student on campus simultaneously developed perfect posture and expressions of mild terror, which was apparently their species' equivalent of, hide, the scary authority figure is coming. Princess Zara's transformation was the most dramatic. Dawn was the relaxed student who'd been laughing with friends over animated lunch discussions. In her place stood a figure of perfect royal composure who happened to be wearing a maintenance jacket like it was the most natural thing in the universe. The contrast was jarring enough to make Alex wonder if diplomatic training included classes on rapid personality adjustment. Your Highness, Captain Theros said when he first encountered Princess Zara in the main corridor, his voice carrying the kind of disapproval usually reserved for finding insects in expensive food. Explain your attire. Captain Theros, Princess Zara replied with diplomatic smoothness that would have impressed career negotiators, I am conducting cultural research through immersive wardrobe analysis. This garment represents typical human working-class fashion and provides valuable insights into their social structures. Alex, who was watching this exchange from behind a conveniently placed atmospheric processor, felt torn between admiration for her quick thinking and horror at being described as a research project. Captain Theros studied the jacket with the expression of someone examining evidence of moral decay. Cultural research, the captain repeated slowly. Through clothing theft. Cultural exchange, Princess Zara corrected with the kind of diplomatic precision that could probably defuse international incidents. The garment was freely given as part of an informal gift exchange program. Gift Exchange Program. A spontaneous diplomatic initiative designed to foster better understanding between human and Altarian students. Captain Theros turned his attention to Alex's hiding place with the accuracy of someone whose job involved locating problems and eliminating them. You. Human maintenance worker. Step forward. Alex emerged from behind the atmospheric processor with as much dignity as someone could muster while carrying a diagnostic tablet and wearing coveralls that had seen better decades. Sir. Captain. Your. Captainness. You are responsible for this informal gift exchange program? Yes. Maybe. It depends on how you define responsibility. Dar. Santos appeared at Alex's shoulder with the timing of someone who'd been monitoring the situation and decided intervention was necessary before bloodshed occurred. Captain Theros, I'm Dr. Elena Santos, the Academy's xenocultural specialist. Perhaps we could discuss this situation in a more formal setting. 20 minutes later, Alex found himself in conference room Alpha facing what felt like an alien court-martial. Captain Theros sat across from him with the kind of authoritative presence that made confession seem like the only reasonable option, while Princess Zara maintained perfect diplomatic composure despite what Alex was beginning to recognize as barely controlled panic. Explain, Captain Theros demanded, how a maintenance worker came to possess clothing belonging to Altarian royalty. She doesn't possess my clothing. I possess her clothing. She has my jacket. Clarification. Explain how Altarian royalty came to possess clothing belonging to a maintenance worker. Alex looked at Princess Zara, who gave him the tiniest nod of encouragement. She was cold. I had a jacket. Basic human decency suggested I should share. It's not complicated. And this sharing has continued for, how long? A week and a half. During which time Princess Zara has worn your clothing to classes, diplomatic functions, and official academy events. She looks good in it. Dr. Santos made a strangled sound that might have been suppressed laughter or horror. Captain Theros' expression suggested he was considering whether human stupidity qualified as a legitimate military threat. Mr. Rivera, Dr. Santos interjected carefully, perhaps you could explain your understanding of the cultural significance of this exchange. Princess Zara was lonely and cold. My jacket made her feel warm and accepted. Seemed like a good trade to me. You traded royal dignity for personal comfort. I traded a piece of clothing for seeing someone smile. Still seems like a good deal. Princess Zara spoke for the first time since the interrogation had begun, her voice carrying formal tones that didn't quite hide underlying emotion. Captain Theros, Alex Rivera's actions represent the finest qualities of human compassion. His willingness to share without expectation of return demonstrates the values we should seek to understand in our allies. His actions represent dangerous informality that undermines royal protocols and threatens diplomatic relationships. Or, Alex said, surprising himself with his boldness, they represent the possibility that maybe diplomatic relationships work better when people treat each other like individuals instead of political symbols. The silence that followed this statement lasted approximately long enough for Alex to contemplate every life choice that had led him to argue with alien military officers about political theory. Captain Theros leaned forward with predatory interest. Are you suggesting that traditional Altarian diplomatic protocols are ineffective? I'm suggesting that maybe protocols work better when they're based on actual understanding between actual people instead of rules written by committees who've never met the individuals they're trying to regulate. That, Captain Theros said slowly, sounds dangerously close to advocating revolutionary political change. That sounds like advocating for basic human decency in international relations. Dr. Santos cleared her throat with the diplomatic grace of someone accustomed to preventing interspecies incidents. Perhaps we could focus on resolving the immediate situation rather than debating political philosophy. The immediate situation, Captain Theros replied, is that Princess Zara will return the humans' clothing and resume-appropriate royal attire immediately. Furthermore, she will have no additional unauthorized contact with maintenance personnel. Princess Zara's ears flattened against her skull in obvious distress, and Alex felt something protective and stubborn crystallize in his chest. What if I don't want the jacket back? Excuse me. What if I formally gift the jacket to Princess Zara according to proper diplomatic protocols? Then it's not borrowed clothing, it's official cultural exchange. Problem solved. Captain Theros studied Alex with the expression of someone trying to determine whether he was witnessing genius or catastrophic stupidity. You wish to engage in formal diplomatic gift exchange with Altarian royalty. If that's what it takes to let her keep something that makes her happy, then yes. Such an exchange would require proper ceremonial protocols, witness documentation, and formal recognition by both governments. Fine by me. Dr. Santos was making frantic notes on her tablet. Actually, that's not entirely unreasonable. The Academy has hosted formal cultural exchange ceremonies before. With proper documentation and ceremonial oversight, this could become a legitimate educational demonstration of interspecies diplomatic practices. Princess Zara looked at Alex with an expression that contained enough gratitude to power the station's entire electrical grid. You would do this? Accept the complications of formal diplomacy to allow me to keep your jacket? I'd accept a lot more than that to keep you from being unhappy. The words hung in the recycled air of the conference room with implications that Alex was only beginning to recognize. Captain Theros' expression suggested he was cataloging each word for future analysis by people whose job involved preventing exactly this kind of emotional complexity in diplomatic relations. Very well, the captain said finally. If you insist on formal gift exchange, then we shall conduct it properly. Tomorrow evening, during the Academy's Unity Festival. Full ceremonial protocols, complete documentation, and witness testimony from both human and Altarian observers. What's involved in ceremonial protocols? Alex asked. Traditional Altarian gift exchange involves formal declarations of intent, cultural significance statements, and ceremonial acceptance rituals conducted in both languages according to established diplomatic precedent. Alex felt his confidence waver slightly. That sounds complicated. Extraordinarily complicated, Captain Theros agreed with what might have been satisfaction. Many humans find formal Altarian ceremonies overwhelming. Perhaps you would prefer to simply reclaim your clothing and avoid the diplomatic complexities? Alex looked at Princess Zara, who was watching him with the kind of hope that made backing down impossible. No. If Princess Zara wants the jacket, then she should have it. Properly. With all the ceremony and documentation and formal recognition that makes it official. Very well. Dr. Santos will provide you with the necessary cultural preparation materials. I suggest you study them carefully. Formal Altarian gift exchange is not forgiving of improvisation or cultural ignorance. As the meeting dispersed, Princess Zara lingered until they were alone in the conference room. Without warning, she reached out and squeezed Alex's hand with fingers that trembled slightly with emotion. Thank you, she said simply. For understanding that sometimes keeping something small and precious is worth navigating something large and complicated. You're welcome. Just, maybe help me not completely humiliate myself during the ceremony. I have a feeling that mispronouncing formal Altarian phrases could cause diplomatic incidents. Princess Zara's smile was radiant. I will ensure you do not accidentally declare war or propose marriage to anyone. Those are both possibilities. Unfortunately, yes. Altarian ceremonial language is remarkably specific about intent and relationship dynamics. One mispronounced syllable could transform a gift exchange into a formal courtship declaration. Alex stared at her with growing alarm. And Captain Theros knows this? Captain Theros is hoping you will make exactly that kind of mistake, providing him with justification to end our friendship and return me to proper royal isolation. Great. No pressure at all. That evening, Alex discovered that studying formal Altarian diplomatic protocols was like trying to memorize a combination of ancient poetry, legal contracts, and musical composition. The ceremonial phrases required specific tonal inflections that his human vocal cords struggled to produce, while the cultural significance statements involved concepts that didn't translate cleanly into any human language. Danny found him at 0200 hours, hunched over translation software and looking like someone who'd volunteered for experimental brain surgery using outdated equipment. "How's the diplomatic preparation going? Did you know that there are 43 different ways to formally offer a gift in Altarian, and 37 of them either insult the recipient's family honor or accidentally propose marriage? That seems excessive. The remaining 6 require perfect pronunciation of tonal patterns that apparently take Altarian children years to master." Alex rubbed his eyes and wondered if it was too late to fake his own death and assume a new identity on a distant colony world. "I'm going to humiliate myself, offend an entire civilization, and probably cause Princess Zara more problems than keeping the jacket could possibly be worth." Or, Danny suggested, "You could trust that someone who's been studying human culture for months might be willing to help you navigate hers." The next morning, Princess Zara appeared at Alex's maintenance station with a stack of handwritten notes and the patient expression of someone preparing to teach quantum physics to a particularly slow golden retriever. "We have 8 hours to prepare you for formal Altarian gift exchange," she announced. "This is sufficient time if you are willing to learn, and I am willing to ignore traditional protocols about royal dignity." "What does that mean?" "It means I am going to teach you Altarian ceremonial language using human educational techniques, which will probably involve significant repetition, creative mnemonic devices, and possibly some highly undignified practice exercises." For the next 6 hours, Alex learned more about alien linguistics than he'd ever wanted to know. Princess Zara proved to be a remarkably patient teacher, breaking down complex tonal patterns into manageable components and creating memory aids that helped him distinguish between formal respectful offering and accidentally declaring eternal devotion. "Remember," she said as they practiced for the 15th time, "the third phrase requires a rising tonal pattern followed by a brief pause. If you drop the tone instead of raising it, you're essentially telling the assembled witnesses that you consider me your property." "Right. Rising tone equals respectful gift. Falling tone equals slave ownership." "Got it. And the ceremonial acceptance requires that I respond with gratitude phrases that acknowledge your generosity without implying romantic reciprocation." "How many ways can you accidentally imply romantic reciprocation?" "In Altarian?" "Approximately 12, depending on context and witness interpretation." Alex felt a headache building behind his eyes. "Your language is unnecessarily complicated. Your language has 17 different meanings for the word run and somehow expects people to determine context through guesswork. All languages are complicated when you examine them closely." By evening, Alex had achieved what Princess Zara optimistically described as functional competency with minimal disaster potential. He'd memorized the required phrases, practiced the ceremonial gestures, and understood enough about Altarian cultural context to avoid the most obvious diplomatic catastrophes. The Unity Festival transformed the Academy's main hall into something that resembled a cross between a diplomatic summit and a very elaborate school dance. Students and faculty from dozen different species mingled under decorative lighting that had been programmed to accommodate various visual spectrums, while the catering systems produced food that was theoretically edible by everyone present. Alex stood near the ceremonial presentation area, wearing his dress uniform and trying not to think about all the ways the evening could go spectacularly wrong. Princess Zara approached in traditional Altarian formal wear that made her look like she'd stepped out of an alien fairy tale, except she was still wearing his jacket over the elaborate robes like a talisman against the universe's tendency toward formal intimidation. Captain Theros served as the ceremonial witness, flanked by Academy officials and what appeared to be a recording device that would probably document Alex's humiliation for posterity. Dr. Santos stood nearby with emergency diplomatic protocols ready in case cultural catastrophe required immediate damage control. "Alex Rivera," Princess Zara said formally, her voice carrying the musical tones that made formal Altarian sound like poetry mixed with wind chimes, "you have requested to engage in traditional gift exchange according to the customs of my people." "I have," Alex replied, proud that his voice remained steady despite his racing pulse. Then speak the words of offering, and let all present witness your intent. Alex took a deep breath and began reciting the phrases Princess Zara had taught him, focusing on tonal patterns and ceremonial cadence rather than the growing crowd of observers. The Altarian words felt strange in his mouth, but they emerged with something approaching the correct pronunciation, carrying meanings of respect, generosity, and formal recognition of the recipient's worth. When he finished, Princess Zara responded with acceptance phrases that acknowledged his gift while maintaining proper diplomatic boundaries. But as she spoke, her eyes met his with warmth that had nothing to do with formal protocols and everything to do with genuine gratitude for someone who'd been willing to learn an alien language just to let her keep something that made her happy. The ceremony concluded with traditional witness acknowledgments and formal documentation, transforming Alex's casual gesture into an official act of interspecies cultural exchange. Captain Theros grudgingly admitted that all protocols had been properly observed, while Dr. Santos looked pleased with what she was probably already planning to document as a successful educational demonstration. "Your jacket is now officially mine," Princess Zara said as the crowds dispersed, her formal demeanor giving way to genuine delight. According to proper diplomatic protocols, with complete ceremonial validity, and witness documentation that no one can dispute. How does it feel to own your first piece of human maintenance equipment? "It feels like home," she said simply, and Alex realized that sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happened when someone was brave enough to navigate bureaucratic complexity for the sake of simple kindness. The weeks following the great formal gift exchange ceremony passed with the kind of peaceful normalcy that Alex had learned to distrust on principle. Princess Zara wore her officially documented jacket to classes, meals, and social gatherings with the confidence of someone whose clothing choices could no longer be questioned by military authorities. The Academy's rumor mill had moved on to speculating about other students' romantic entanglements, and Captain Theros had returned to wherever alien military officers went when they weren't inspecting student wardrobes. Alex should have been relieved. Instead, he found himself oddly disappointed that his grand gesture had resolved so neatly into routine. "You look like someone whose dramatic romantic gesture worked exactly as planned but somehow left you feeling empty inside," Danny observed over breakfast, demonstrating the kind of psychological insight that made him either an excellent friend or a deeply annoying amateur therapist. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was cultural diplomacy. Right. You learned an alien language and performed formal ceremonial rituals just to let someone keep your jacket. Completely platonic cultural exchange. She was happy wearing it. I wanted her to stay happy. Simple humanitarian motivation. "Alex, you practiced Altarian pronunciation for 6 hours. That's not humanitarian motivation. That's either love or obsessive-compulsive disorder." Before Alex could construct the appropriately sarcastic response, Princess Zara appeared at their table with the graceful precision that made her approach seem choreographed. She wore his jacket over another set of elegant robes, but something in her posture suggested diplomatic urgency rather than casual social interaction. "Alex Rivera," she said formally, "I require your assistance with a matter of some cultural complexity." "What kind of cultural complexity?" "The kind that involves formal presentations to visiting governmental representatives, potential policy changes affecting interspecies education, and the possibility of accidentally creating new diplomatic precedents that could influence relationships between our civilizations." Danny stood up with the expression of someone who recognized when conversations were about to exceed his security clearance. "I'll just go study somewhere else." Princess Zara settled into the vacated chair, her ears twitching with nervous energy. "The Altarian Educational Council has requested a formal presentation about my experiences at the Academy. They wish to evaluate whether expanded cultural exchange programs would benefit our people." "That sounds like a good thing." "It would be, except they specifically want to discuss the innovative and formal integration techniques that have contributed to my educational success." She gestured to his jacket. "This has become more significant than either of us anticipated." Alex felt a familiar sinking sensation that suggested his life was about to become complicated in ways he hadn't planned for. What kind of significance? Your gift has been documented as the catalyst for improved social integration, enhanced cultural understanding, and successful adaptation to multi-species educational environments. The Council views it as a potential model for future exchange programs. They want other alien students to receive maintenance jackets. They want to understand how informal human gestures can achieve cultural integration results that formal diplomatic protocols have failed to produce over decades of effort. Alex stared at her, trying to process the implications. Are you telling me that giving you my jacket accidentally revolutionized interspecies education policy? I am telling you that your simple act of kindness has been analyzed, documented, and classified as a significant breakthrough in cross-cultural relationship building. The Council wants to interview you as part of their policy evaluation process. Me. They want to interview a maintenance technician about diplomatic theory. They want to interview the human whose spontaneous cultural sensitivity produced results that trained diplomats have struggled to achieve. Over the next hour, Princess Zara explained the scope of what Alex had inadvertently created. His jacket had indeed transformed her social experience at the academy, but the changes had rippled outward in ways neither of them had anticipated. Other alien students had observed her successful integration and begun adopting similar strategies: informal clothing exchanges, casual social interactions, and participation in activities that emphasized shared interests rather than cultural differences. The result was a dramatic improvement in interspecies social cohesion that had caught the attention of educational authorities across multiple civilizations. What had begun as Alex helping someone stay warm had evolved into an unofficial model for cultural integration that was being studied by experts in xenosociology, diplomatic theory, and interspecies psychology. Dr. Santos has been documenting everything, Princess Zara continued. Student satisfaction surveys, social integration metrics, academic performance improvements among alien students who've adopted informal interaction strategies. Your jacket has generated more positive data about interspecies education than the previous 5 years of formal programming combined. That's completely insane. That's the power of treating someone like a person instead of a diplomatic challenge. The presentation was scheduled for the following week, conducted via holographic link with the Altarian Educational Council and attended by Academy administration, various governmental representatives, and enough academic observers to make Alex wonder if his maintenance uniform qualified as appropriate formal wear for reshaping interplanetary education policy. Princess Zara spent the intervening days coaching him through the complexities of addressing alien governmental authorities without accidentally committing diplomatic faux pas that could derail decades of carefully negotiated treaties. Remember, she said during one of their preparation sessions, when Council member Valdris asks about motivation, emphasize humanitarian concerns rather than personal attraction. The Council understands humanitarian motivation. Personal attraction to alien individuals makes them nervous. What if they ask about the cultural significance of clothing exchange? Explain that human gift-giving traditions emphasize practical utility and emotional comfort rather than formal symbolic meaning. Make it sound like standard human behavior rather than unique personal initiative. Even though it wasn't standard human behavior. Especially because it wasn't standard human behavior. The Council wants to believe that humans naturally possess cultural sensitivity that can be systematically replicated. If they think your actions were spontaneous rather than programmatic, they'll be more likely to support expanded exchange programs. Alex practiced his responses until he could discuss interspecies cultural dynamics with something approaching competence, though he still felt like someone who'd been asked to explain quantum physics using interpretive dance. The night before the presentation, Princess Zara gave him a small gift wrapped in cloth that appeared to have been woven from starlight. What's this? A new jacket. Traditional Altarian formal wear, sized for human proportions and designed to complement your skin tone and eye color. Alex unfolded the garment, revealing something that looked like his maintenance jacket had been redesigned by someone who understood both function and beauty on levels that human fashion had never quite achieved. The fabric was clearly synthetic but felt like it had been grown rather than manufactured, and the cut managed to suggest both professionalism and approachability. This is incredible. But why? Because tomorrow you will represent the possibility of genuine understanding between our peoples, and you should look like someone worthy of that responsibility." Princess Zara smiled with a warmth that at first made Alex realize she was more than just alien royalty trying to survive human education. "Also, because you gave me something that made me feel like I belonged here. I wanted to give you something that makes you feel like you belong in the larger universe we're trying to build together." The presentation itself went better than Alex had dared hope. The Altarian Educational Council proved to be less intimidating than he'd feared, thoughtful individuals who asked intelligent questions about cultural adaptation and listened to his answers with genuine interest rather than diplomatic politeness. His new jacket apparently conveyed exactly the right impression of informal professionalism, while Princess Zara served as both translator and advocate, ensuring that his human perspectives were understood within Altarian cultural frameworks. The questions focused on practical implementation. How could informal cultural exchange be systematically encouraged? What training would help human students engage more effectively with alien peers? How could educational institutions create environments that promoted spontaneous cross-cultural friendship rather than formal diplomatic interaction? Alex found himself discussing concepts he'd never formally studied, drawing on his experience with Princess Zara to explain how genuine relationships developed when people were allowed to see each other as individuals rather than representatives of their respective species. He described the importance of small gestures, shared experiences, and the willingness to prioritize someone else's comfort over cultural protocols. "The jacket was just the beginning," he said during the final question period. What mattered wasn't the gift itself, but the recognition that Princess Zara was cold and lonely and deserved help, regardless of her species or social status. Once we established that foundation of mutual concern, everything else became possible. The Council's final recommendation, delivered 3 weeks later, approved expanded cultural exchange programs based on what they termed the Rivera Protocol, informal integration strategies that emphasized personal connection over diplomatic formality. Princess Zara would remain at the Academy as a permanent cultural liaison, working with Alex to develop training programs for both human and alien students. "So we're officially partners now," Alex said as they reviewed the Council's documentation in what had become their regular study alcove. "Professional colleagues in the business of interspecies education. We have been partners since the moment you gave me your jacket," Princess Zara replied, adjusting the formal Altarian jacket she now wore, a counterpart to his that marked them as a diplomatic team. The official recognition simply makes it easier to explain to people who require bureaucratic justification for obvious emotional truths. "And the jacket that started all this?" Princess Zara gestured to the display case that now held Alex's original maintenance jacket, formerly preserved as the first artifact in what the Academy was calling the Spontaneous Cultural Exchange Collection. "It has become a symbol of possibility. Proof that the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happen when someone decides that another person's happiness is more important than following rules." Alex studied the preserved jacket, remembering the morning he draped it over the shoulders of a shivering alien princess without any thought beyond basic kindness. "Think we can teach other people to have spontaneous diplomatic breakthroughs? I think we can teach them that seeing each other as individuals is the first step toward changing the galaxy." Princess Zara smiled with the confidence of someone who'd learned that belonging was possible anywhere, as long as someone was willing to share their jacket when you were cold. One informal cultural exchange at a time. Through the Academy's main windows, transport ships carried students from dozens of worlds to educational opportunities that now included formal training in the Rivera Protocol, the systematic application of spontaneous kindness in interspecies relations. It wasn't the future Alex had planned when he'd chosen maintenance work over more ambitious careers, but it was a future where small gestures could reshape the relationships between civilizations. And sometimes, he'd learned, that was the most important kind of revolution, the kind that began with someone being willing to share what they had with someone who needed it, without worrying about whether the rules said it was appropriate. The jacket in its display case seemed to glow softly in the Academy's recycled light, a reminder that the most powerful diplomatic tools were often the ones that came from the heart rather than the handbook.